There was a time in Elenna Longden's life when she didn't hear voices in her head. She was just an anxious teenager.
Certainly for most of my teenage years, I think I was quite insular, very introspective, very sort of inside myself in a way.
Elenna grew up and went to university.
This is just the college where my halls of residence were.
Quite sort of 80s, sort of municipal. Stop me, if you think my powers of description are getting just too mesmerising.
Stalin-esque, sort of like something like the Soviet bloc.
Were you throwing yourself into student life, like Freshers' Week and everything?
Yeah, I was. I mean, first few months at university are actually genuinely happy memories. And, I think I was very academically competent. I was socially successful. I had lots of, sort of exciting, glamorous new friends. And I really actually did enjoy the university experience.
Did you join any clubs?
The TV Society. I just remember going around in Freshers' Week and going around the stalls that had the best freebies and getting a lot of free pop noodles. I think that's my overwhelming memory of Freshers' Week.
So the first few months at university were normal for Elenna. But then something unexpected happened.
Literally one day I woke up and there it was.
What was it?
It was a voice that used to simply narrate what I was doing in the third person. So, for example, it might say, she is going to a lecture, she is going to the bar.
What, all the time?
It would certainly be several times an hour.
So, like, she's still walking down the road?
Yeah,
still.
Pretty much. I was startled by it, but not particularly disturbed.
Was it a bit like having a kind of friend?
I wouldn't go so far as to say a friend, but there was a very dull and tedious friend.
This went on for a few weeks. She is walking down the road. She is walking into a building. Elenna thought it was annoying, but not a big problem.
I had a seminar group where there was another student there who used to sort of viciously and mercilessly put me down and challenge all my opinions. But I would notice after these circumstances that I would leave the seminar room and the voice would say, as normal, she is leaving the room. But the tone had changed and the voice sounded angry.
How do you say she is leaving the room in an angry way?
It sounded frustrated.
She's leaving the room?
Yeah, basically. Good work, John.
Thank you. Elenna didn't tell anyone. She said she really didn't mind the voice. She wasn't scared so much as quite interested. But then one day she decided quite randomly to mention it.
I went back to my halls of residence and there was a friend there and I told her and she was absolutely horrified.
While you were saying it, was the voice saying, she is finally telling someone about me?
She is digging her own grave. No, the voice remained silent. It was a pity actually it didn't say, look, just shut up now. And this friend sort of pretty much insisted that I make an appointment to go and see the university GP. I went to see this doctor and spent the first part of the appointment just talking about how I felt, which was very much in terms of low self-esteem, anxiety, and, his eyes kept wandering around the room and he was very palpably bored. And then I said, oh, and there's this voice. And he sort of swung around and literally sort of dropped his pen and was suddenly very, very interested and, fascinated by this. And he started asking me all these questions, but it seemed that I couldn't actually tell him what he wanted to hear because he would say, he was asking me things like, does it tell you to hurt yourself? Does it tell you to hurt other people? Does it make you do things? And I was saying, no, nothing like that. It just narrates what I'm doing in the third person. But what I didn't know then, which obviously I know now, is that voices commenting or conversing is actually seen as a symptom of schizophrenia.
Did he say that to you?
He didn't, but he said that he thought it would be a good idea for me to see a specialist. I went to see my psychiatrist for an outpatient's appointment and it was running very late. And when I was at university, I was part of a team that used to broadcast news bulletins to communal TV stations around the campus. What happened was I told the psychiatrist, look, I'm sorry, doctor, I'm going to have to go because I'm reading the news at 6. I was down in my medical records that Elenna has delusions that she's a television news broadcaster. So it was actually completely true. When I went to see her again on the next appointment, she said, "Oh, you know, look, Eleanor, I'm not really sure what's going on for you. I think it would be a really good idea if you went to hospital." And she was really selling it, and she made it sound like Butlins and saying, you know, we've got pool tables there and we've got a tennis court and, you know, I'm a student, so I'm thinking, you know, free food, free laundry, bring it on. And went on a voluntary admission on the understanding that it would just be for 3 days. And it was nearly 3 months before I finally left that hospital again. I was labelled, I was medicated, and I was left.
One thing you should know about me. Sometimes my life goes all the way down so deeply that I cannot see the one thing to save me.
So, Eleanor, we're in the car park of a Victorian building covered in scaffolding. Where is this?
So this is the psychiatric hospital where I had my first ever admission. I mean, as you can see, it's sort of very austere, imposing looking place. And I remember very vividly actually just this sense of just horror and hopelessness upon seeing it for the first time. Going into the main foyer, there was a sign which was sort of left over from the building's infancy, which said, you know, for the care and confinement of lunatics, which they'd thoughtfully not removed.
So at what point did you start thinking, well, where are the pool tables?
There was a pool table, but because I was permanently locked on the ward, I was never allowed to use it, so I felt utterly cheated. There was bars on the window. There was no separate rooms. It was all dormitories. It was mixed sex, so men and women on the same ward. And I was the youngest person on my particular ward by at least 15 years. There was people from prison there, people who were very, very institutionalised and very floridly mad. And this was sort of really horrifying for me, because it was this sense of, is this what's going to happen to me? Is this my future, really?
Yeah. I mean, how was the voice in all of this?
In terms of the voice, I'd previously seen this as an experience, and I was now being told that it was a symptom, and not just symptom of mental illness, but a symptom of this carnivorous entity called schizophrenia. And what happened was that when I subsequently heard this voice, I would become very, very fearful and antagonistic towards it. I would try to ignore it, try to resist it. And basically what happened is it created this sort of vicious cycle, really, where the voice in turn became stronger and more aggressive. So one voice became 3, 3 became 6, 6 became 9. I ultimately left the hospital hearing 12 voices. I went into that hospital as a quite demoralised and fragile teenager, and I did go out of it as somebody who was very, very psychotic.
Sometimes the night blows all the way through me. It puts out the light inside me.
A so-called dominant voice emerged. And in my case, the dominant voice took on this grotesque visual manifestation.
What, so you actually pictured the person saying it?
Yeah. It was a man. It was immensely tall, swathed in black, very shadowy, very nebulous. The only thing about him that was very clear was that instead of a hand, he had a hook, sort of like a butcher's hook.
Oh, where do you think that kind of image came from?
I think the significance of a very tall man in dark clothes was relevant to abuse experiences, and I think some of the more overtly horrific elements, such as the hook, was partly, I think, due to sort of horror films that I'd watched as a teenager. And I would look up and see this awful sort of shadowy figure skittering past my bed, and then I would turn round and then it would be there, stood right in front of me.
And what were the voices saying? What kind of phrases were they saying at this point?
They would discuss amongst themselves sort of terrible things that were going to happen to me in the future, expressing sort of revulsion actually at me, at what a pitiful and pathetic creature that I'd become. But the dominant voice was extremely menacing. It would talk a lot about death, it would talk about mutilation, destruction.
I think.
Eleanor says that the voice that talked about death and mutilation sounded like the sinister, mechanical-sounding voice on In the Beginning, the first track of the Moody Blues album, On the Threshold of a Dream.
Of course you are, my bright little star. And now to suit our great computer. magnetic.
I'm more than that.
It used to almost try to bargain with me, and this would be much later after sort of being discharged from hospital, and it would say that it could change things, that it had the power to turn back time, and that it could do this and it could put me back to the circumstances I was in before I went into hospital. But in order for it to do that, I would have to prove that I was worthy of its help. So it used to set little tasks. It would say things like, you have to go out today dressed in nothing but red. I used to walk particularly down by the lake, so we could go down there, because I used to sit down there quite a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned the kind of challenges it would set you, and one was going out just entirely in red.
That is a coincidence.
Yeah, I'm thinking that you're dressed pretty much entirely in red now.
Oops.
Can you remember any others?
It started off relatively banal, so, pull out 4 strands of hair, because I just obeyed unhesitatingly without question. The demands of the voices became more insistent and more extreme.
Was there never a time when you tried to stand up to the voice?
I would occasionally sort of make this hysterical plea to the voice, and the voice would always be completely impervious.
So what would it say, like, this isn't a democracy, don't try and bargain with me?
This is a police state. You have no power here, that was the basic message, and I believed that. At one point it told me that I had to go down in front of a lecture room full of students and pick up a glass of water and pour it over the lecturer's head, which I actually did, which I'm quite proud about. And then from that it moved on to saying I should injure myself, and again that was something that escalated.
How did the lecturer feel about having a glass of water poured over his head by you?
I think it was just almost seemed to be slightly in shock, actually, and couldn't quite believe it had happened. And there was just this sort of suspended just silence around the whole lecture theatre.
And what did you do? Did you apologise?
No, I just walked out. It was almost, like these kind of labours of Hercules, really.
Did the voice actually use terms like labours of Hercules?
The voice it was always very, very grandiose. There was something almost sort of Victorian about it, but also this almost horrifying nobility that it had. Probably partly influenced by the fact I was doing an English degree at the time.